Hello everyone, how's it going? So with this commentary we'll be covering the entire pipeline development for a shotgun in Unreal Engine. First I conceptualized how the model would look, so I went into looking for existing games to see how they use auto-reload shotguns. So with these examples we can see how the model looks, how the texture is applied, and the animation and the general behaviour of how the weapon works. Because I'll be designing for a continuously firing shotgun, it's important that I don't preview ones that include a reload style on the model. I also created a mood board to view other styles for shotguns and add to my design process. So I blocked using the basic shapes that I've got in Maya. The design doesn't have to be particularly complicated, it just needs to give me a rough outline of where the components of the weapon would look. It's useful for understanding dimensions and getting the scale of your object correctly. So just basically by looking at these simple shapes it gives you a rough outline of where things will and will not be. So now I've moved on to the block. But again with the shell, because that's a part of the motion or a key component that I'd like to show off with this shotgun. So I try to keep a relatively simple look, as well as a mirrored one for an easier technical animation. The block here you can see is really making it easy for me to get the proportions right, so I know where the rest of the components are going to be. This is just acting as the connector to the animation. I wanted this to spin around and act as a mechanism for proving that you've reloaded. And then I've moved on to the first barrel. So I wanted to give this quite a sci-fi look of a used shotgun. So I'm trying to go for these sharpish cuts and corners, and the bevel and extrude tools are really helpful for doing this. So as you can see here I've got a nice angular cut. I also want this to be quite a sharp kickback from the weapon. So these long rectangular shapes really help for these kickback looks of weapons. So here I am trying to just add some complexity to it. The bells, the angular cuts make things look really visually interesting. And then we're going to move on to the top one. I want this one to represent the end of the barrel, so I try to close it up with the same shapes and styles because I want them to connect together, but a triangular look is what I went for in the end. So after I'd got my bevels and corners and cuts how I wanted them, I push them in just like that and it gives them nice look. And then we're going to move on to the centre body where the barrels will kick back into. Trying to keep this triangular shape in mind where these angles are and all these awkward shapes. It can be a bit of a pain to have to work with these, but I quite like the visual result in the end, so I kept going with it. And because my animation is going for a very pneumatic look, it's not a huge difficulty animating. Here I'm moving on to the trigger. This was done using a curve, which I've just extruded the faces along to get the shape I wanted. I've done the same with the hold that connects the trigger. So I'm just correcting things here now. The shape didn't quite work out how I wanted it to. But it's these angular corners that are just cut and all these faces that stick out of other faces. It's the sort of style I wanted to go for visually. It gives it quite a not intimidating, but a very horrible mechanical look to it. So there's all these awkward shapes out of it. So here with the handle, I've gone for another angular look with it just sticking right out, and then another start and end point. Now I'm going to move on to the stock. I wasn't too sure how I wanted this to go, but I went for a pretty standard look. It was done using the same method I used with the trigger, and some other methods I've used where I just have to connect up the faces. It gave an alright look, but I wasn't particularly happy. It looked like something was missing at the top, but the shape is pretty much coming together now. It's quite, based on how the block looked, it's easy to see where things are, but there's all that excess space at the top, so I wanted to add something there, so I thought a pipe might work out quite well, especially as it adds into the mechanical design. I gave it an angled curve. It also makes the weapon look a lot more balanced, so curves are a really useful tool I can use to make the complex shapes like that. Here I'm just unwrapping. I'll go into detail more on this later, but this was a pretty standard sewing off faces together and then unfolding it. I wanted another smaller version of that as then, just to add to it. And I thought the same shape I had the back was already quite good. I just wanted a smaller one of that. I think the result was quite well. Here I'm just trying to tweak the edges to give it a round, sharpish look. I wanted this to be quite angled as well. And here I wanted a grip. Originally I was going to go for a flat hand below design, but I couldn't quite visualize how it would work below the rotating animation, so I decided to go for a standard shotgun grip. No, I think it turned out alright. So even there's the sharp corners. They are softened edged to make it much more rounder, but I wanted all these indents and designs with the object. I think it worked out quite well. So now I'll be moving on to the unwrapping stage. And this is an important section because first I have to unwrap each object correctly, which is what you're seeing here. But I also need to make sure that each mesh's UVs all fit on one texture for the sake of exporting to Unreal. Unreal does have a system where you can export one texture per mesh, but the system can be very awkward and be very messy after a while, so it's much more ideal to use one main texture for each component of the mesh. So to do this I used a script to scale down each thing correctly and position it, which is what you're seeing here. These cubes represent the information on each mesh, and the idea is I keep these as balanced as I can so that all the cubes are the same size, meaning that each area of the object has the same amount of texture information as the next. It doesn't have to be the most precise thing ever, but it can be a real pain if you're texturing a certain way, meaning that on some areas there are higher fidelity areas than other. Onto the rigging process now, and I'll be using joints in order to animate this and export it. So the joint system works by having one root joint which will parent all the static parts of the mesh towards it, and each of those external parts are then parented to that root joint to act as the moving parts. I then animate these joints in order to have the parented meshes be also attached to it, which also causes the animation, and this is the method which I'll be using for Unreal. I'm using the graph editor here to adjust the animation curves to make it appear more mechanical, and then I can bake this animation to get the complete effect. Once that's done, I can export the rig and the animation joints into Unreal, as that's the system that Unreal will be using in order to understand the object. Here I'm quickly doing a test in Unreal to see how it looks. It isn't quite perfect, so I'll be making a few corrections to that later, but for now I'll be moving on to the texturing. So I'll be using Quicksort in order for my texture process, and what I'm doing here is importing my mesh so that Quicksort knows what I'm doing with it, and I'll be collecting samples of textures that I think will be suitable for my weapon. Because this is a shotgun with a sci-fi look, I'm going to be looking into metal and iron steel and in a rusted sort of look, and I think I go with some rusted iron and stains, as well as a used car shell as one of the designs. Once I've gathered the texture samples, I can then export them and apply them to the UV that I created earlier. But I also need to split up the texture samples into their allocated areas. So I'll be viewing this in Maya to see where the textures should and shouldn't be applied, and then applying where each texture sample should be to what particular mesh. It's just a simple case of erasing all the information where it shouldn't be and then overlapping the rest where it should be. And I'll just do this for each texture sample. Fortunately, I don't have that many with this weapon, so the process is relatively simple, and it can become a bit complicated if you're using it for multiple maps. So after I created the albedo map, I'll be moving on to normal. Here I'm color coding the sections so I know where all the texture samples should be. When I place in the normals, I know what area I can and can't keep. So it's just a case of placing it in the correct area. After, I can export both my albedo and normal maps and then apply them to Unreal to see how the model looks. So with the final textures added to the weapon and the animations corrected, we can now see how the weapon would behave, and I'm quite happy with the result. And this will be all for this commentary, so thank you for watching and goodbye.